What up, guys? Welcome today on the podcast. We're going to be doing another rules for jiu-jitsu. This one is an important one. I think it's something to recognize, and it'll be useful to you with your training. And it's something that I think, just in the way that I look at things, this is something that someone noticed recently in one of the videos. They were like, Chewy, like you tend to like find all these different abstract ideas and then you sort of bring them together, right? And that's just the way my brain works. Like I'm looking for a million different things and sort of seeing how they connect together. If you've ever read one of my emails, you've probably seen like these weird tangents going from like out off in left field, and somehow I bring them back to jiu-jitsu or whatever it is. So with that said, we'll tell you what the lesson is in just a second. But before we get into the podcast, thanks to our sponsors for helping make this thing happen. So you guys get to listen to us every week, every Monday, if you get it on the day that it comes out or whenever you listen to it. Big thanks to Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web is a CBD company. They are one of the premier CBD companies on the market. They were the first one I ever heard about years ago. And I remember the first time I heard about CBD, I thought it was like snake oil. It just sounded like some random supplement that someone was trying to shovel down, everybody's face. Like I remember back in the day, they, as a kid growing up around in like the late 90s, early 2000s, when I was reaching, my teenage and adult years, I remember there had all those different supplements like, that were coming out like all the different creatines and proteins and stuff. And they would have all these outrageous claims like, it's going to build 70 pounds of pure muscle in 3 weeks or some garbage like that. And so like I remember as a kid, man, I don't know about you, dude. Like I remember I was like trying to get swole when I was like 16, 17, 18. And I went out and I spent some good money on protein powders and creatines and stuff like that. And, a lot of it was garbage. Like one of the creatines that was promoted back then was it was creatine, and it had a butt ton of sugar. Mm-hmm. Like it had, in one serving, it had almost like as much sugar as like a can of Coke, right? And so it's a ton of sugar. So by the way, if you guys are curious, the average can of Coke, so if you went to Starbucks and, or coffee shop and someone ripped open 12 packets of sugar, right? You would look at them and go, oh my God, that's disgusting. That's about how many packets of sugar, because a packet of sugar is 4 grams. That's about how many packets of sugar goes into a can of Coke. Just a heads up. And so it had like basically 12 packets of sugar. And so, yeah, all these teenage kids were getting bigger because they were like getting waterlogged from all the damn sugar they were eating. But again, it was junk. And so I personally, as I've gotten older, I got really sort of jaded by a lot of supplements, because you realize it's just all snake oil. It's like there's some really good protein powders out there. And I use protein, and I use creatine monohydrate. But again, you don't need anything fancy for it. But when CBD came out, I heard all the claims. I was like, I don't know about this, man. It sounds ridiculous. And then I used it, and I became a believer of the product, and I thought it was really good. And so again, my encouragement to people is always try it for yourself, because you never know how that stuff works. Everybody responds to protein or to supplements differently. And CBD is just another one of those things. If you've got a great diet, you're getting your sleep right and everything else, it can be one of those little things to add into the mix that can make a big difference. For me, it's one of my mainstays for improving recovery from training. And so that's why I use it primarily. I take my dose at night. In case you're curious, I usually take either I take the gummies or I take the tincture. Those are my two that I go to, and I'll take my dose usually right before bed, and it just helps me. It seems to improve the quality of my sleep, and that's what I've noticed from it. But again, try it out for yourself, see what you experience. And again, if you want to do so, go to their website at charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20 to save 20% off the order. And again, it helps support the podcast. You get a product, try it out for a month, see what you think. Also, thanks to our sponsor, Epic Roll. If any of you guys follow me on YouTube or Instagram, and you ever see me wearing a shirt that everybody wants, it's probably Matt's shirt. So like the other day I posted some videos, and I had on the triangle choke shirt. And basically it's a really simple shirt, but if you guys want to see it, go to YouTube or go to Instagram. You can check it out. And everybody was like, where is this shirt? Where can I get this shirt? And that always kind of happens with him. And so that said, If you guys want to get yourself any of Matt's shirts or his gear, I really love his no-gi stuff as well. Besides his shirts, I mean, I probably wear one of his shirts at least once a week, and I wear his no-gi stuff almost every time I train no-gi. It's pretty much it's Matt's stuff that he had done for me, the Jiu-Jitsu stuff, and then the We Defy rash guards that I wear because I like the way they fit. But again, if you want to check out any of his stuff, you can go to epicrollbjj.com, and you can use the promo code Chewjitsu for 15% off. Also, guys, if you want to support the podcast directly and get access to exclusive content that is not released anywhere else, it's not released on any of my other memberships, any of my other products or courses or anything else, you can get access to it by going to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. And inside the membership, we have exclusive content that we've recorded with all of our guests that we've had on the podcast over the years. We have some extra stuff. And again, we try to focus it so that one, it's either entertaining, so it'll be more of what you guys experience on the podcast, just a little differently, or it's something that's very applicable, like a very applicable tip that you could execute with your jiu-jitsu game tomorrow, that kind of thing. And so if you want to get access to that, just go to the website at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. And last, guys, if you want to join the Chew Crew email list, that is my email subscription. You can do so by going to my website at jiu-jitsu.net/join, JOIN. When you join up, you'll get 3 free ebooks, a video for free. And then by joining, you'll also get my daily email, which comes with, basically my philosophical ramblings, ideas on trainings, book recommendations, training recommendations, and as well as exclusive discounts that I don't release anywhere else to my products, seminars, and everything else. And so if you guys want to get that, just go to my website at jiu-jitsu.net/join, JOIN. And guys, with that said, let's jump into this podcast. So today's lesson, today's rule for jiu-jitsu is that wisdom doesn't come cheap. Now, when I say this, it's instantly like, yeah, we know, right? But here's the deal. Here's the thing that I notice from people, and this is something I've said many times. When people get into jiu-jitsu, they know it's going to be a struggle. They know it's going to be tough. They know it's going to be a really difficult thing to take, right? And initially it is, and they get to a point where it seems to be getting better. But what ends up happening with people a lot of times is when they face their own difficulties, like everybody wants a struggle until it's their turn to have a struggle, basically. And I think this is a thing to keep in mind, because if you look at it this way, the way that I'm going to tell you in a second, if you look at it a certain way, nothing bad really happens to you. And so what I mean by this is, like, kind of as a grappler, nothing really bad happens to you, depending on the mindset you take. Every failure you have is a lesson to learn from. Everything that, sometimes is unfortunate, like injuries and stuff like that, you can become stronger. You can become a better person from it. I even take this mentality to pretty much everything off the mat as well, where, again, a lot of times when I'm going through difficulties in my own life, I'm looking at it like, okay, this is a chance for me to get better. I'm going to get something from this whole thing. And again, this is my struggle to bear. And that's just life. That's the way it is. And, again, the difficulty is going to make me stronger as long as I'm willing to endure it. And that's something to keep in mind, because the other day, I used an analogy. I said that jiu-jitsu, much like life and everything else, is like a Ferris wheel, right? Sometimes you're on top, but don't get too attached to it, because you're going to end up on the bottom at some point. And when you're in the bottom, don't get too down about it, because eventually you're going to go back up as long as you're on the ride. And so with this wisdom doesn't come cheap idea, and this idea that, again, you got to pay for your experience, you got to pay for everything on a emotional level. There's that. It's going to be difficult, and you've got to be willing to stay on the ride the whole time and not get off just because it gets difficult. Again, you knew this is what you signed up for. And we know this is what's going to happen with anything we do. And then there's the other side to it, which we can get into, which is it's going to not always be cheap monetarily, right? And it's funny because people seem to get very upset about that part. I guess my mindset with money has always been different. I never looked at like paying money for things that I really wanted to do or experiences I wanted to have as a bad thing. But I've seen so many people that, like, they'll say, I'm not going to spend $100 and do a tournament and possibly lose my first match. No way. I'm like, why not? Like I've done it plenty of times. I've paid like I remember like there's one match where I think collectively all the travels and everything else, I spent like $1,500 and got put out in my first round. It sucked. It was awful, but I learned a hell of a lot from it. And it was actually interesting is that $1,500 loss ended up helping me make money later on, because I was able to kind of recoup it from specific things I learned in that particular match that I didn't commit, the mistakes I didn't commit later on. But this is just the idea, when we get into things, wisdom is emotionally and physically draining. It's tough to gain, and it's generally also pretty expensive. Even in the business side of things, I've paid a lot of money to like meet people, to pay for courses and learn stuff, to meet people for lunch. Like I've paid people like good money to just sit down and have lunch with me and let me pick their brain for a little bit. And it was money well spent. I don't look back and think, oh man, they got me on. They got me over on something. I was like, no, it was really good money, because I can see something afterwards that came from it. And so that's what we're going to start off with.
Yeah, a lot of stuff, lot to unpack. Like, talking about the emotional investment, right? It's a roller coaster. It's like I think that every belt level or every part of your jiu-jitsu journey or path has some different types of things emotionally that you kind of deal with. I don't know. Like, I think it's hard to, as a white belt, you're kind of on the bottom of that. If you think of the Ferris wheel or whatever, you're on the bottom, man. You're on the bottom, and you're constantly the nail. And then you get, I got a sweep here, or I didn't get submitted this roll, and then it just little bit by little bit you get rolling. Then there's newer people that show up, and now you're not the newest person. You're a little bit better than them. You have a little more skill. So I think, like, having that mindset that it will get better. I would say all people, but most people, it will get better. I think some people just aren't into it, or they don't quite understand.
Sure,
or what
which is okay. Yeah,
which is okay. And jiu-jitsu is not for everybody. We talked about it. If we look at what we do as jiu-jitsu athletes or martial artists, it's kind of crazy a little bit, right? It's a little like we choose to go out of our way, out of our nice, comfortable lives, to go to this place where people are going to physically and emotionally try to, it's emotional for me, like to lose or whatever, go like even during a roll, like, I'm gonna, hitting a submission or being close to being submitted. There's just a lot of stuff that goes on, but like, we choose this, and it's sometimes like, well, why the hell do we do, why do we do this? Because that investment, that emotional investment, physical investment, eventually pays dividends. Because after a tough training session, man, do you feel good? You feel like you're on top of the world. You feel relaxed. You feel like you accomplished something. So I think emotionally, it's beneficial, but you got to go through some of the dark spots too.
Sure. Well, and something to think about is I think I really resonate with this idea from Ernest Becker's work, where he says that a lot of what humans do is to try and gain self-esteem, right? So we're all searching for a place where we belong, where we can grow within, and where we can be worth something, right? You think about this, everybody's looking for their little space. I think a lot of times this is where it's unfortunate, I think. And then this is, I'm a bit older, so maybe this doesn't ring true with people, but I think that a lot of people who are younger and they criticize the whole society that we live in as terrible and awful and yada, 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 even though it's, compare it to what's existed in the past and even exists right now, it's amazing. But I think it's because the game's not working out for them. And instead of continuing to work for it, because the game doesn't, let's be honest, the game doesn't work for most of us in our 20s. We're all struggling most of the time, right? You don't really feel like you pick up a stride until you get into your 30s, at least for me. And they just want to say, well, this game sucks, I'm not playing this anymore. And then they try to make their own game where they can be, that thing, and I think that's a case where you have this in jiu-jitsu where we come in and we're all searching for it. And so if we tend to take a liking to it or take an act to it, and we get better and we get this skill that not everybody can have / not everybody's willing to develop, that feels pretty damn good. Like, it feels pretty damn good to be good at something that's very difficult. That has a way of impacting your life in so many levels, because you as a person, like, you can legitimately see like I can do something that not everybody can do. I remember having that experience in wrestling. I got good at wrestling and I was winning lots of tournaments and I was like literally physically beating people, taking them down, slamming them, pinning them to the mat. And then like I could like walk around school and I was like, you know what? No matter what, like I'm good at something that none of these people are even remotely good at, and they couldn't be good at because they don't have the willingness to put themselves in through this difficult sport. Because to me, like in high school sports, wrestling is like wrestling's it. Like I remember seeing like other practices and they were tough. I mean, like I remember being in football practice, full pads, middle of the summer, it's hot, everything else, and it's like 100 degrees outside, and we're sitting here running in this pads. It was nothing compared to like an average wrestling practice. When I got done with wrestling, when we'd go to football practices, I remember being able to run circles around everybody because I'm like, you guys are out of shape compared to what we're doing in there, because they would just try to kill us in the wrestling room, And so there's something to be said about going through that. And jiu-jitsu's, again, jiu-jitsu's not nearly as hard as like a high, like well, it depends on the gym you go to. An average jiu-jitsu class where you come in and train, it's not nearly as hard as like a hard wrestling practice. Some jiu-jitsu gyms run their practices like that, but your average gym isn't running like that. But it's still very difficult. And most people in society don't have the stomach to do that, because they'll look at us, like you said, like crazy people. I know that, like I shared this the other day, my nose got broken back in the day. And then I remember I went to the doctor to get the gauze taken out. Basically by gauze, they were like, they was literally like gummy worms. It was like they were dissolvable gauze. So it wasn't actual gauze. It was like this like weird gummy worm packing. And so he's like, taking them out of my nose. And at the end of it, he goes, so man, are you going to keep doing that jiu-jitsu stuff? And I was like, well, doc, I was a full-time coach at this point. I was like, it's kind of what I do for a living. So yeah. And I mean, I love doing it. It's like what I've kind of devoted my life to. And I remember he just kind of looks at me and goes, huh. Then he goes back to do it. Like you could tell he was like, what's wrong with this person? Like what's wrong with this Neanderthal that's sitting in my chair, But again, they just don't get it. And so there's something to that. And again, also the wisdom that you gain through going through that difficult experience is powerful, because I've thought this a number of times. I tend to trust people who do difficult stuff more than I trust people who don't. And I know that sounds weird, but it's just because like you kind of know who you are on a deeper level when you've been through some stuff, right? When you've been through some difficult stuff, because a lot of people, they can skirt through life and basically get by without having too many difficulties. But like when you get to experience like the different sides of yourself in the room, where you're in a contained space and you get to deal with it, it's very powerful. Because like, for instance, like when I was younger, I had a temper, bro, and I didn't know how to control it. I learned how to control my temper through jiu-jitsu, because basically I would get angry because I was getting smashed. I get frustrated. And if I got angry, it went from bad to worse. So I realized like when I'm in difficult situations, I can't get angry, because angry is not going to help. This is why, like, sometimes, like, I remember a buddy of mine years ago, he was another jiu-jitsu guy. He came over to my house. And at the time we had a house that where this we had this issue with the plumbing that we had to take care of. It's not important, but basically we all went to go watch a movie that night while he was in town. We come back and the washing machine, because we put our gis in there, the washing machine water had overflowed and there was water everywhere. And I was like, damn. And I remember I just like got down and just started cleaning it up. And he was just like, I remember he goes, bro, he's like, you didn't even get mad or anything. I was like, well, how am I going to get mad? What's it going to do? I was like, it's just like, it's like, I'm in the situation where I like right now with this water, it's like the same thing as being smashed under side control. I can get pissy all I want to, but it's not going to get me out of the situation. What's going to get me out of this situation is be cool, calm, collected, figure it out. And in that situation, it's like, what's going to get me out of this is basically just get a damn mop and just get to mopping, and again, but that's a thing, that's a piece of wisdom that I gained through grappling, through being in difficult situations over and over again. And again, you would like to think that this is kind of just universal to human nature, but it's not, because think about how many people fly off the handle all the time when one little bad thing happens and they don't have control over themselves. And so when you go through difficult physical things like jiu-jitsu, like wrestling, grappling, you get a deeper insight into yourself, and not just the good stuff. You get an insight to the bad stuff. This is why I talk about the idea that a gym is like a walled garden. It's an analogy that was used in a book by a guy named Robert Bly in a book called Iron John.
Mhm.
And in the book, he talks about the fact that everyone in their life needs a walled garden because basically the walls provide protection from the outside world. So inside of our gym, we're dealing with a lot of stuff. And the gym walls and the culture itself provides protection from the outside world. Because again, we would not trust someone we did not know to put us on an armbar or a choke and to respect a tap or to like let go when we get caught in something, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, he said that it's the dark, rich soil that then is combined with the sunlight, the light, the brightness to be combined all together with our efforts and our dirty work with our hands to create something to grow, right? And so if you use that analogy, I mean, this is what we're doing. We're working with the dark sides of ourselves. We're working with the brighter sides of ourselves, right? So in the same room, you could be pissed off and frustrated one minute. The next minute, you submitted your buddy and you help them back up and you show them what you did so they can improve better and later on, right? You can have these beautiful things going on, and it's through your effort that you create these things. And so I think that that's a powerful place to be able to work with yourself, to do work, and it's done not in some sort of like woo-woo fashion, right? Where we're like we got to grow, man. You know, it's like you're working with yourself in the sense where you're faced with difficult stuff and you have to. There's no choice, right? Like I never thought of myself as like I need like something new age where I needed to like lose my temper because of whatever, because I'm going to get myself out of alignment with my chakras. I was just like, this isn't working. He laughed. Yeah, I got you. I knew I was gonna get you that one because you anyway. The
Dude, there's something like resiliency, you know, like you build resiliency, and that doesn't come from doing easy shit. It comes from doing difficult things. It comes from constantly like doing something a little harder, pushing a little harder, you know. It's like, damn, we gotta do like 6-minute rounds, whatever it is, you know. It's like that's tough. Then we're gonna do positional work from areas where you're weak or you don't have a lot of success, or you got to be stuck in, you know, in mount under this big, strong purple or brown or black belt, and then it's annoying, and like you're right, you can panic and waste your energy, and then maybe give up a submission, or you can stay calm, stay tight, get your hands in the proper position, make your frame, and then go. Pick your battles, pick your time, and you just kind of know I don't feel like it's so much as a reaction, but it's like a calculated movements. Everything's kind of, you know, people that are very good at jiu-jitsu are more calculated. They're kind of setting up positions, you know, they're planning almost like they already know where they want to be, but they have to go this roundabout way sometimes with a skilled practitioner. But like that resiliency, man, like not getting pissed off about stuff that, like, you know, like road rage, or an easy one is like, you know, driving and somebody cuts you off. You know, gyms on Dixie Highway, shit happens all the time. People cut you off. Sometimes you get rear-ended while you're stopped going to the gym. That stuff happens. But like you're like, man, it is what it is. And after you do some difficult things, like you don't take those easy outs to get pissed.
Sure.
Like it takes a little more. I'm not saying for me, I'm not saying like I don't ever lose my temper, but
well,
like
of course,
I'm less likely to.
Right.
And especially in jiu-jitsu, like I'll get, you know, I'll get frustrated. I'm not necessarily angry. I'll get frustrated, but I'll always, most of the time, if I have a frustrating training session or a roll, like I'm like, all right, this is what I need to do better. I always figure something out, or I learn, I pick something up that I can work on.
Yep. And then there's the other side to it where sometimes it's expensive, like it's expensive emotionally and physically, but it's also expensive monetarily. But here's the thing I want people to think about, right? Because I see this all the time. Some people obviously don't care, but I've seen so many people make such a stink about the fact that gyms cost money, that tournaments cost money, that I mean, you know, and the thing is that like, I mean, I wouldn't ask anyone else to like, you know, basically not get paid for what they do. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to ask someone else to like, you know, if like like some doctor or something was getting ready to work on me, right? I'm not going to try to shortchange him. It's because of whatever. I'm like, bro, like you're a doctor and you're getting ready to work on me. I want you to do the best you can do. And so, you know, you spent all this time developing this skill. I don't want you to like get shortchanged for it, right?
Sure.
And so people develop a lot of like time into these things, and it takes a lot to get all this stuff running. So it's one of those things. But the money thing, here's the thing to think about. there's a difference between valuable and expensive. Like those are two different things. Something can be very, very expensive. And then there's other things that cost a lot of money, but they could be immensely valuable.
Yeah.
So to sort of tell people, like for instance, like one person, like I paid like over $1,000 to like spend time with a business coach to just sit down and have lunch with him. Actually, not even a business coach. It's a guy who's been in business, who's done stuff that I wanted to learn about. So I'm like, I paid him money. I was like, let me sit and have lunch with you. Paid over $1,000 for it. It was immensely valuable, not expensive. And again, this wasn't at a time when I was just rolling in dough. By the way, it was just like, hey, like I thought it was a worthwhile thing to spend on.
Yeah.
I've spent, I don't even want to think about how much money I've spent on books, courses, things like that to improve either my business, my personal development, or any of this stuff. I don't want to think about it because it's so much money, right? And with competitions, I probably have spent a large portion of my income over the last, 20 plus years on competitions, jiu-jitsu, travel, training, everything else. And I find it valuable. The difference with me with expensive, like I think TVs are expensive. This is why I did not buy a TV until this past year. I haven't had a TV since I was like 20 years old because I was like, they're expensive. It's a thing that sits on my thing. It wastes my time. I don't get anything productive really for it. I mean, I get to turn off my brain for a little bit, but I can do that in other ways. To me, it's a very expensive purchase. I don't really think I get enough from it to value it. I got it now because I've got some extra money to spend. So why not? Buying some expensive car. For me, that's really, I see some really nice car that's brand new is very expensive because I'm like, I'm not really into cars. Now, other people could judge this differently. This is a judgment thing. This is subjective. But I look at things like cars. I look at things like really big houses is expensive because I'm like looking at it. I'm like, what am I going to do with all this stuff? Like it's not my thing. Right. And so you got to think about it. And as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, it can be different. Everybody's got their subjective, the things that they see, their subjective sort of value systems for things, and they have things that they're after. But if you're someone that's like really serious about jiu-jitsu, who maybe wants to be a coach someday, the thing that I would urge you to consider is if you were so focused on just like, I don't want to spend this money on something, right? What are you going to have to give to people when you're a coach, right? Like what experiences are you going to have? Like, because you're not going to have any, because you're like, well, tournaments are too expensive. Training trips are too expensive. Gym dues are, this is real expensive. I mean, you're just not going to have anything to give to anyone.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not filling up your own cup. And, if you think about this, like college is expensive. Like some college degrees are very valuable. Some college degrees are ripoffs and they're incredibly expensive. Right. And because it's like, some of these college degrees you'll get out with like, 50 to 70 grand of debt and you can't get a decent job. Some degrees are very valuable. They're very specialized and you can get out making some good money. And so to me, it's like, with jiu-jitsu, like let's say if you're really getting into jiu-jitsu and you want to do something with it, which is what I wanted to do, I saw it as kind of almost like instead of paying for college, I'm paying a lot less money for this education that I'm getting here, through different means. And so I think, but regardless, I think that before you judge something as expensive based upon its dollar amount, you have to sort of consider, is it valuable to you? And a lot of times, if we look at our lives, most people have some measure of expendable money to burn, right? I've been around, like when I was a kid growing up, I remember like having family that were really, really poor. And somehow they always had money for a pack of smokes, right?
Somehow.
I was like, I don't know. I was like, how do you guys always have money for that? Like, I mean, I thought this as a kid. I was like, how do you guys have money for cigarettes? You guys are always saying you're getting money, but now you got like $5, $4 or whatever it costs to go get a pack of cigarettes. I'm like, that's a lot of money. Think about that every day. Like that's a lot of money over time.
It is.
So, we all got expendable money. We all have some. So if you're going to use it, it would be worthwhile to use it on something valuable, which may be technically monetarily, it might be kind of expensive to you, but if it's valuable to you, then it's a good trade-off.
Yeah. It's all about what you value, right? It's all about what you value, what you hold high or important. Like, I think jiu-jitsu, the ability, most people that have some level of jiu-jitsu, maybe a blue belt, are probably going to be able to defend themselves to some extent. They should be able to. A blue belt, we'll just say blue belt's a good level. It's a life skill, like being able to do that, like the resiliency, the mental toughness, the skill you learn, that's a life skill. Another thing, here's an example, like my kids, we're taking them, we took them like swimming lessons, right? And they just weren't getting anywhere. And then we found like this in my mind is like this little old lady that's a guru or whatever. And she's been teaching, she's like 80 years old, and she's been teaching kids to swim out of her pool in her house. And like, it's like not cheap. And she's like, you need to come as many times, get the kids as many times as possible, just to get them really to figure it out. And that way it'll be beneficial. So we're spending, like a good amount of money, like 3-4 times a week, if we can get in there as much as possible, because I feel like it's expensive. It adds up, and it's cash, so, but for me, I'm like, this is a life skill. Like my kid, they're going to value this. This is something that could keep them alive if something happens, right? Like jiu-jitsu is a life skill because it could keep you alive. It could save you, but it could also teach you so many things. Like, man, you're going through a difficult time in your life. Well, you have this thing that you learned that was difficult, that you've gained something from, whether it's emotional or like mental toughness or physical toughness, or putting yourself in a difficult situation and not panicking, so that's like a multifaceted life skill, and it's valuable. And the other thing, I don't know if we've talked about yet, is what it's not cheap. We pay with our time. We use our time away from our families, away from our loved ones, to drive or travel or train, and I think that when you could do something else, play video games over there, but we go and we spend our time to do this thing that I feel like is, to me, immensely valuable, and especially that goes towards the environment as well. Like, jiu-jitsu is valuable, but also where and who I do jiu-jitsu with is also very valuable to me. And I'm willing to drive extra time or spend extra time, going to a gym that's further away, because I value the experience as well. And also I value the coaches and the environment. And I think that, to me, is part of the jiu-jitsu experience, is part of the value of training jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. And kind of to go back to your point you just made, like I have a family member who lost one of their children because they didn't know how to swim.
It's crazy.
They end up getting to water and they didn't know how to swim and they drowned. Right.
Yeah.
So the one time your child like somehow slips into some water and they're able to swim, whatever amount of money you paid is instantly worth it. Right.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's a life skill.
Exactly. And then when you think about this too, think about people coming into jiu-jitsu. Like I've seen so many people who have come in and like we've had several people come in and lose like immense amount of weight, like anywhere from 50 to 100 pounds. I've seen everyone from kids to adults come in with a very coward physical stance to all of a sudden they come in with a little bit of swagger with their shoulders up, because they know physically what they can do. I've seen parents who have brought their kids in to train, and then their kids can stand up to bullies and stuff like that. And, whether you look in the mirror and you see someone different, you get to stand on top of the podium and feel like you're a winner for the first time in your life. Whether you're a parent and you have a child who is no longer scared to go to school, there is no like price you can put on that. That's like, I mean, I guess there maybe is a price depending on what you can afford, but that's so valuable. It's so hard to quantify. What is that worth to you? And even another thing it's really interesting too is the collective wisdom that you get from being around good people. Like you said about people, like that's one of the things that's really made like one of the biggest impacts in my life. So when I was starting to train jiu-jitsu, it was $75 a month. This is 2003. And we were training in like a small room in a powerhouse gym. And we had very specific times that we could go in there because that room was shared with other programs. I also paid the $75 for my buddy to go train with me because he had a car and I didn't. So basically I would pay for his gym membership and in turn we trained together. And so it's like $140. I'm 18 years old. It's 2003. I'm not making a lot of money. I'm a busboy at like a restaurant and I'm going to school, right? So not making a ton of money, but you do what you got to do. But even being in that environment, I got exposed to so many good people with all kinds of different life experiences that lend itself to me becoming a much more, like, I would not be as well off as I am today had I not been in the mat room meeting people who had things going on in their life, because there would have been no other way for me to meet them. They were from completely different sides of the tracks in the city, economically, socioeconomically. So I would have never met them. And so there's a power to that too. That was very valuable to me. And even to this day, like, you know, basically inside of our gym too, right? I'm sure it's like this for a lot of gyms. Anybody needs something done. Hey, I need an electrician. I need a plumber. I need either someone is one or someone knows one. You know, I need a truck for the weekend. Who can help me out? You got someone, right? And I think that in itself, that's something that, like, you know, we don't think about that, but that's something that is not as common in today's society, where you have a big network of people. Because, you know, for instance, back in the day, we all went to church, right? And when you went to church, you had people that you were connected to in this network of people. Like, I was reading about a guy it was a guy who's this article was written like 10 plus years ago, when like the middle class was starting to emerge in China. And the guy he was a Chinese businessman, and he was saying that he went to church, and he was like, yes, I believe. He's like, it was a Christian church, right? Went to church, and he was like, but even if it's not, the network of people that you get who are also trying to be good people, that in itself is worth going. Because he's like, you know, because whenever he does deals, he's like, I'm going to do deals with the people that I go to church with because I trust them. Right. And so, because we have this shared belief. And so being in a place where we have some sort of common thread that runs amongst us, that's a very valuable thing, because then you have this huge network of people that you become connected to that can be life-changing in some cases. And so again, all that's very, at least for me, has been very valuable. And I think if people stop and think about it, it's a very valuable thing.
Yeah, like I think the ability to trust people, if you've had your trust broken, you know, the ability to trust someone on the mats, you know, if somebody has you in an arm bar, and they, you know, that they're going to value, or they're going to, you know, stop when you tap out, and because you are kind of sharing, like you're kind of, you know, you're also giving a lot, you know, you're giving your body to someone to, you know, that they could hurt you and you could hurt them. And like, I think that trust is, you know, something of huge value, immense value. Because sometimes, you know, without the community, the jiu-jitsu community that you're in, or the gym that you're in, like, you can look out there and feel like you can't trust anybody. You don't really know anybody that deeply. And I think that when we have a good gym culture and a good gym environment, you actually get to know people. You trust them you trust them, number one, to train with them, but you also trust them as humans, and like that they're going to give you the best advice, or they're going to give you the best direction to go to. And like like you said, a lot of the people, whether like we need advice on, you know, like lawyers or anything like that, right? Like, what do? You call your buddy at the gym that's a lawyer, and you know they're going to send you in the right direction. So I think like there's a value to that as well. Just the network of people that we have, or that you gain through jiu-jitsu, I think is very valuable, because I think you spend more time with these people than maybe some of your high school buddies you were close to, or whoever you're close to, and you choose to be around them too. That's something to be said. Like, you choose to be around these people. So I think there's just such, you know, and I think having a common goal too, like being around people that are like-minded, in some aspects. People have very different political views or life circumstances, but like we both have a goal of wanting to improve, you know, get better at jiu-jitsu, no matter where you come from or what you look like. You know, you may have some value to add to the jiu-jitsu mat. So I think that's also hugely important and very good to see.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like, see that. Yeah.
Well, like last night, we were when we were done on the mat, we were I was like splitting those drinks with everybody, and we were just talking about like Trump stuff. Yeah. You know, and not everybody likes him, not everybody cares for him, whatever, you know, like.
And it was non-alcoholic drinks. We were just drinking. Like,
we were drinking. They were actually energy drinks. Yes. But you know, and again, we were like talking about ideas about it and things we didn't like or whatever else, but it was done in a very like tactful way, which is very hard to do anymore, right? Because you know, most people's way of talking about such things is online, which turns into just a complete fest, right? And then if not, they only talk about it with people that they know are going to agree with them. Yeah. But so we're in a place where we can like hang out and talk about whatever we want to talk about. And again, I know that everybody likes to bring politics in the mat. We like in our gym, we basically talk about whatever. And it's usually either before or after the class. So it's not during the class. It's like after the class is over, we will literally talk about whatever. And again, no one's trying to like slam dunk on each other. No one's trying to like yell at each other. It's just, we just talk about stuff.
Why do we do that, do you think? Why do you feel like we have the environment or the space to have these conversations? And I have something to add as well, that I'm more willing, I'll just say this. I'm way more willing to listen to someone that I train with, because I feel like I know them as a better as a human. So if they have a different opinion than me, I like to, I like to just to listen and kind of have questions, but I'm more willing, I think, to listen to someone from the gym if they have a different perspective than me. But
here's a question I'll ask you.
Yeah.
Here's a question I'll ask you. If we were talking on the mat and like, let's just say everybody was talking about something that was maybe a touchy subject, and someone started screaming at one of our, like if one of our other students started screaming at one of our other students, how do you think that I would react?
You probably ask them to leave.
I would ask them to leave. I'd
or calm down, or one of the two. You probably give them a chance to chill out. But
yeah, like, hey, relax, it's okay. You know, and if they didn't, you would have to leave, right? Because it's like, that's just not acceptable. Like, even like, you know, the way that, because I heard about this, that one of the guys on the mat got a little crazy one day and submitted one of the guys and got up and started yelling and hooting and hollering, and you kicked him off the mat, right? Like, you got to hold the boundary. And so again, people know, like, for one reason or another, they know that that's just not acceptable.
Yeah.
And they can disagree with anything that anybody says, but we can't trash each other, because that's not what we're here to do. And, you know, again, we do have a shared connection. We've beaten the tar out of each other, and that connection is much stronger than any superficial thing that we're going to argue about, the whatever, you know? And so I think it's there. And again, we're starting to get off topic, but again, I think this is the idea that kind of to leave you guys with, again, wisdom through grappling, whether it be through the sort of the proverbial tread on your body that you spread every day, or that you wear out every day you train, through the monetary, you know, value of training, how much you spend on it, through training trips, through everything else, through the emotional ups and downs you go through. All of it's expensive, right? Like, but again, experiences are valuable, skills are valuable, and the wisdom that you gain collectively from the network that you're around, all of that's very valuable. But at the same time, like, none of it comes cheap. I think this is just something to remember both on and off the mats. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed the podcast today. Hopefully you, as always, got an idea to chew on for your own training, your own life off the mats, you know, whatever it might have been useful to you. Again, appreciate you guys for being here. And again, appreciate our sponsors for helping make this podcast happen. Charlotte's Web, if you want to check them out and get CBD for the first time, or maybe get a refill or a new, not refill because I don't refill anything, but a resupply rather. But again, if you've never used CBD before, try it out for the first time, see what you think of it. If you go to Charlotte's website at charlottesweb.com, you can use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu20 to save 20% on the order. For those of you that ask me on Instagram or on Facebook and email, I use about 15 milligrams or whatever, like roughly a night. That's what I use at nighttime. So that's my dose as of right now. I've used more, I've used less. 15 seems to be kind of a sweet spot. There was one time where I was mismeasuring I got the 60 milligram thing, and but one serving is 0.5, and I was using the whole dropper.
Oh yeah.
So I was actually getting like 120. And what was strange is I didn't feel as good. I didn't feel like I actually felt better when I kicked it back down to about like 15 to 20. You know, I didn't when I bumped it up to 120, it wasn't like I had some profound, like, oh man, this really like knocked me out or got better sleep. It was like, you know, there's like a minimum like viable dose for me that seems to work. Right. And so I seem to prefer that like 15 to 20. And so again, I encourage you guys, if you get it, try it out, see what you think, and kind of go from there. Also, thanks to Matt at Epic Roll for helping make the podcast happen. He's been a sponsor for a long time. If you guys are ever watching any of my videos, if you ever look online and see some pictures of me, and I've got on some kind of cool jiu-jitsu related shirt, 9 times out of 10, it's probably his shirt. Those are the shirts that I wear most of the time. It's either mine or his. Those are the shirts that I wear in the videos and everything else. Again, if you want to check out any of his shirts or any of his nogi gear that he has, which is really high quality, super cool. I love his rash guards, and I love his nogi shorts that have no Velcro on them. It's such a small thing for some people, but for me, it's amazing. I love having the non-Velcro. They're just so much more comfortable. There's none of that going on like with the Velcro. And also I've had the Velcro-less shorts for a couple years now, the original pair that I started wearing, and they're great. The problem with like a lot of Velcro shorts is they might be together, but the Velcro wears out and then you can't wear them anymore. And so again, it's a small thing, but if you train as much as I do, it's a big thing. And so you can check out all this stuff at epicrollbjj.com. The promo code is Jiu-Jitsu for 15% off the order. Also, if you guys would like to get exclusive content that we have on our Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. With every guest that we've ever had on the podcast, we have an episode from them. We also have a lot of exclusive content that we've not released anywhere else, whether it be on YouTube, any of my product or courses on the back end, none of that. It's in there. Some of it is very much meant for entertainment for you guys to enjoy. And some of it is meant for very specific practical training ideas. A lot of times when we have the guests on there, like some of these guys are really incredibly high level black belts that are competing right now at the highest level. We try to ask them on training strategies, how they structure their training, things like this, ideas that could be potentially useful to you to listen to. And again, you can get access to that in plus like years of content. So, I mean, it's a great deal for the price that we have it set for. If you guys want to get access to it, it's patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast, and you can get going there. And guys, if you'd like to join my email subscription, which I've dubbed the Chew Crew, you can do so by going to my website at chujitsu.net/join. And when you join up, you'll get 3 free ebooks. One is on developing your own jiu-jitsu game plan. One is on drilling strategies to improve your jiu-jitsu. And then one is on some at-home training and study tips that could be very useful to you. I originally created it during the coronavirus lockdowns that we had. You can get access to all 3 of those and then get my daily email. And in my daily email, you'll get a myriad of things from little philosophical ramblings. You'll get ideas on training, some things that are going on in my life, book recommendations, as well as exclusive offers that I don't release anywhere else. And so, guys, if you want to get access to all that, you can do so by going to my website at chujitsu.net/join. And again, I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast today. Hopefully, again, I say it all the time. Whenever we do the podcast together, we always try to sort of focus in on an idea that maybe you guys get something from. Because just like we said that wisdom is not cheap, right? I value the time that you guys spend with us. Just like, when my students come into the gym, I value the fact that they spent money, they spent their time, they spent their energy, they're literally their life force, giving it to the gym, giving it to the other students, and giving it to me. And so I respect the time that you guys take to either, spend with us in your car, spend with us when you're hanging out at the house or when you're lifting weights or whatever it is you're doing. Appreciate the hell out of you guys. And so again, thank you guys for being here. And hopefully you got something from it, because that's what we try to do every time you guys pop the podcast on. We want you guys to get at least one idea that could be useful to you. And if it is useful to you, then my encouragement as always is don't just collect the idea, go and execute on it. So appreciate you guys as always, and we'll talk to you next week.